Every night, I watched my wife slip out of our bed like a ghost. Sarah would wait until my breathing became deep and steady, then carefully lift the covers and pad barefoot across our hardwood floor. The first time I noticed, 3 months ago, I assumed Tommy had another nightmare. But as weeks passed, this became her nightly ritual. I'm Mark Thompson, 38 years old, and I thought I knew everything about my family. 12 years of marriage, 8 years of fatherhood, a comfortable life in Brookline, Massachusetts. I work as a senior accountant at Morrison & Associates. Sarah teaches 3rd grade at the local elementary school, and Tommy just started 2nd grade. We had what everyone called the perfect suburban family, but perfection, I was learning, sometimes hides the most devastating secrets. Last Tuesday night changed everything. I pretended to sleep as Sarah gathered something from her dresser drawer, papers, I think, and slipped out of our bedroom. This time I followed. Standing in the hallway, I pressed my ear against Tommy's door and heard whispers. Urgent, secretive whispers about things Daddy can't know, and promises to keep practicing until it's perfect. My 8-year-old son was keeping secrets from me. My wife of 12 years was orchestrating those secrets. And I had no idea what was happening in my own home. If you've ever felt like a stranger in your own life, you'll understand the fear that gripped my chest. Hit the like button if you've ever questioned whether you really know the people closest to you, because this story will make you look at your family completely differently. The house we bought for $485,000 7 years ago suddenly felt like a prison. Every creaking floorboard, every whispered conversation that stopped when I entered a room, every knowing glance between Sarah and Tommy, it all felt like evidence of a conspiracy I couldn't understand. I had built my entire identity around being a good husband and father. What happens when you discover that the people you die for might be lying to you about everything? Sarah started acting differently during the day, too. At breakfast, she'd exchange meaningful looks with Tommy, little nods and half-smiles that excluded me completely. When I asked Tommy about school, he'd glance at his mother before answering, as if seeking permission to speak. "Tommy seems quieter lately," I mentioned to Sarah one evening as we cleaned dishes. "Is everything okay at school?" She dried a plate with more force than necessary. "He's fine, Mark. You worry too much. I'm his father." Worrying is part of the job description. So is trusting your wife. Her tone carried an edge I'd never heard before. "I spend 8 hours a day with children his age. I think I'd know if something was wrong." That night I lay awake listening. Sure enough, at 11:47 p.m., Sarah's side of the bed shifted. She waited 10 minutes, I counted, then slipped away. I followed again, this time positioning myself where I could see into Tommy's room through the crack in his door. Sarah sat on his bed holding what looked like flashcards. Tommy was wide awake, fully dressed in jeans and a t-shirt instead of pajamas. They spoke in whispers too low for me to understand, but their body language was intense, focused. This wasn't a mother comforting a child after a nightmare. This was a lesson, a rehearsal, but for what? The next morning, I decided to do something I'd never imagined in 12 years of marriage. I called in sick to work and drove to Tommy's school. I needed to talk to his teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, without Sarah knowing. "Mr. Thompson, what a surprise," Mrs. Rodriguez said during her lunch break. "Is everything all right with Tommy?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out. Has he been acting differently lately? Distracted, maybe? Secretive?" She frowned. "Actually, yes. For the past few weeks, he's been asking strange questions about court proceedings, legal terminology. Yesterday, he asked me what testimony means. I assumed you or Sarah had been watching legal dramas together. My blood turned to ice. Legal terminology? He also asked about witness protection programs. Very advanced concepts for a 2nd grader. I meant to mention it during parent conferences next month. I drove home in a daze. Legal terms, testimony, witness protection. What kind of nightmare was my family involved in? That evening, I confronted Sarah directly. "We need to talk. About whatever you and Tommy are doing every night." Her face went pale. "Mark, I can explain." "Then explain." "Because right now, I'm imagining the worst possible scenarios." Sarah looked toward the living room where Tommy was watching cartoons, then back at me. "Not here, not now. Give me 1 more week and I promise you'll understand everything. 1 more week. Sarah, our son is asking his teacher about witness protection programs. What the hell is going on? She grabbed my hands, her eyes filling with tears. Please trust me. I know how this looks, but I'm protecting our family. Both of you, just give me 7 more days. That night I made a decision that would have been unthinkable a month ago. I ordered a small wireless camera online with overnight delivery. If my wife wouldn't tell me the truth, I'd discover it myself. I installed the camera on Thursday while Sarah was at work and Tommy was at school. A tiny device, no bigger than a thumb drive, positioned to capture whatever was happening in my son's bedroom. The same bedroom where I'd read him bedtime stories, where I'd taught him to tie his shoes, where I'd comforted him through fevers and bad dreams. Now it felt like enemy territory. Friday night. I pretended to fall asleep at 10:30 p.m. My phone, connected to the wireless camera, lay face down on my nightstand. When Sarah slipped out of bed at 11:52 p.m., I waited 5 minutes before checking the feed. What I saw made me question everything I thought I knew about my family. Sarah entered Tommy's room carrying a leather briefcase I'd never seen before. Tommy was not only awake, but dressed in a small suit, a suit I didn't even know he owned. She pulled out thick manila folders, photographs, and what appeared to be legal documents. Remember, Sarah whispered, when they ask about the night Grandpa died, what do you tell them? I tell them exactly what I saw, Tommy replied in a voice more serious than any 8-year-old should possess. Mr. Peterson pushed Grandpa down the stairs. I saw him from the kitchen window. My father had died 6 months ago. Officially ruled an accident after he fell down the basement stairs at his rental property. But according to what I was witnessing, my son had seen something else entirely. And what did Mr. Peterson say to you afterward? Sarah continued. He said if I ever told anyone, he'd hurt you and Daddy. But I'm not scared anymore because I know the truth is stronger than threats. I nearly dropped my phone. James Peterson was my father's business partner, a man I'd known for 15 years. A man who'd comforted our family at the funeral, who'd helped us settle Dad's estate. According to my 8-year-old son, he was also a murderer. Sarah showed Tommy photographs, crime scene photos I recognized from the police investigation. When the detective asks about this picture, what will you say? I'll say the basement light was on when I looked through the window. Grandpa never went down there with the light off because he couldn't see the steps well. Mr. Peterson must have turned it on. Which means Grandpa didn't fall by accident. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. My father hadn't died accidentally. My son had witnessed his murder, and my wife had been preparing him to testify, protecting him from a killer who'd threatened our entire family. But why hadn't Sarah told me? I watched for another hour as she coached Tommy through potential questions, helped him understand complex legal concepts in age-appropriate ways, and most importantly, built his confidence to face what would certainly be traumatic testimony. Mommy, Tommy said as they finished, what if I forget something important? You won't, sweetheart. We've practiced every night for 3 months. You know this better than anyone. And remember, you're not just telling the truth for Grandpa. You're protecting other people Mr. Peterson might hurt. Will Daddy be proud of me? Sarah's voice broke slightly. Daddy will be so proud of you. He loved Grandpa very much, and knowing the truth will help him heal. That's when I understood why Sarah had kept this secret. She wasn't betraying me, she was protecting me. If I'd known Peterson was a murderer who'd threatened my family, I would have done something reckless. I would have confronted him, possibly violently. I might have compromised the case, or put us all in more danger. Sarah was handling this the right way, the legal way, the safe way. And she was doing it alone, to protect both her husband and her son. I cried silently in our bed, ashamed of every suspicious thought I'd harbored about my wife. Saturday morning, I couldn't pretend anymore. While Tommy played in the backyard, I sat Sarah down at our kitchen table. I know about the testimony, I said quietly. I know about Peterson and what Tommy saw. Her face crumpled with relief and exhaustion. Mark, I wanted to tell you so many times. Why didn't you? She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Because you loved your father more than anyone in this world. If I'd told you that Peterson murdered him and threatened our son, what would you have done? I knew exactly what I would have done. I would have driven to Peterson's house with a baseball bat. I would have confronted him in his office. I would have done something stupid and potentially criminal that could have destroyed our case and our family. You would have protected us, Sarah continued, but not the right way. We need Peterson in prison, not you. Tommy needs his father free and safe, not consumed with rage or sitting in a jail cell for assault. How did this all start? Sarah poured herself coffee with shaking hands. 6 weeks after your father's funeral, Detective Morrison called me. Someone had come forward with new information about the case. They wanted to interview Tommy because a neighbor remembered seeing him playing in your father's backyard that evening. Why didn't you tell me then? Because when Morrison explained what they suspected, I realized how dangerous this was. If Peterson killed your father for insurance money, which is what they believe, and if he knew Tommy witnessed it, her son was in serious danger. She showed me documents hidden in a kitchen drawer, police reports, witness statements, financial records proving Peterson had been embezzling from my father's construction company for years. The insurance policy alone was worth $750,000, Sarah explained. But Morrison found evidence that Peterson forged documents transferring ownership of 3 rental properties into his name just days before your father died. We're talking about fraud worth over $2 million. The scope of Peterson's crimes was staggering. This wasn't a simple murder case. It was a complex financial conspiracy that had been building for years. Tommy's testimony is crucial because he's the only witness who saw Peterson in the house that night. Without his statement, Peterson might never face justice for what he did. I stared at the police documents, evidence of a betrayal that went back years. Peterson was at the funeral. He gave a eulogy about their 30-year friendship. Sociopaths are excellent actors, Sarah said bitterly. He's been playing the grieving business partner while liquidating your father's assets. If we hadn't discovered this, he would have stolen everything your father worked his entire life to build. That afternoon, Detective Morrison came to our house for the first time since this investigation began. A tall woman in her 50s, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She explained how carefully they'd been building the case. We've been monitoring Peterson's communications for 8 weeks, Morrison said. He has no idea we're investigating him. His phone records show he was near your father's property the night he died, despite telling police he was home all evening. What happens now? I asked. Monday morning we execute search warrants on Peterson's home and office. We'll arrest him on charges of murder, fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. Tommy's testimony will be recorded in a child-friendly environment with specially trained interviewers. She turned to Tommy, who'd been listening with the serious attention of someone far older than 8. Tommy, you've been incredibly brave. What you saw that night will help make sure Mr. Peterson can never hurt anyone else's family. Tommy nodded solemnly. Will Grandpa's spirit be happy that we told the truth? Morrison's tough exterior cracked slightly. I think your grandpa would be very proud of all of you. Monday morning, I took the day off work to be with my family during Peterson's arrest. We waited at home while Morrison and her team executed the warrants. The phone rang at 11:30 a.m. We got him, Morrison said simply. Peterson's in custody, and we found evidence in his office that confirms everything Tommy told us. Financial documents, forged signatures, even a receipt for cleaning supplies purchased the night of the murder. The relief was overwhelming. For 3 months, my family had been living under the shadow of a killer who threatened us daily. Now that threat was locked behind bars. That afternoon, Tommy gave his official statement at the police station's Child Advocacy Center. Sarah and I watched from an adjacent room as our 8-year-old son, with remarkable composure and clarity, told investigators exactly what he'd witnessed. Mr. Peterson came to the house after dark, Tommy explained to the gentle interviewer. Grandpa let him in and they went down to the basement. I was washing dishes for Grandpa and could see the basement door from the kitchen window. What happened next, Tommy? I heard them arguing. Mr. Peterson was yelling about money. Then I saw Mr. Peterson push Grandpa really hard. Grandpa fell down the stairs and didn't get up. Did Mr. Peterson see you? Yes. He came upstairs and found me in the kitchen. He told me if I ever told anyone what I saw, he would hurt my mommy and daddy. He said people wouldn't believe a little kid anyway. How did that make you feel? Scared. But also mad, because Mr. Peterson was mean to Grandpa, and Grandpa never hurt anybody. The interviewer, a woman trained in childhood trauma, guided Tommy through every detail with patience and care. His testimony was clear, consistent, and devastating to Peterson's defense. 3 days later, Peterson's lawyer contacted the district attorney about a plea bargain. Faced with Tommy's testimony, financial evidence, and phone records, Peterson's case was hopeless. He pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and multiple counts of fraud in exchange for a sentence of 25 years to life. During the sentencing hearing, I was allowed to give a victim impact statement. I stood at the podium in that courthouse, looking at the man who'd murdered my father and threatened my family, and spoke not just for myself, but for every son who'd lost a father to greed. James Peterson didn't just kill my father, I said. He stole years of memories, grandchildren's relationships, and a legacy of hard work and integrity. But most importantly, he forced my 8-year-old son to carry the burden of witnessing murder and living with threats of violence. I turned to look at my family in the gallery. What Peterson didn't understand is that truth and courage are stronger than fear and greed. My son found the bravery to speak for those who can't speak for themselves. My wife found the strength to protect our family while seeking justice. They taught me that real heroism isn't about anger or revenge. It's about doing what's right, even when it's terrifying. Peterson was sentenced to 27 years in prison. He'll be eligible for parole when he's 73 years old. 6 months later, our family began receiving restitution payments from Peterson's seized assets. The money my father had worked his entire life to build would now fund Tommy's college education and help us create the legacy Dad always wanted for his family. But more importantly, we learned something invaluable about trust, courage, and protection. Sarah's decision to handle this crisis without involving me initially felt like betrayal, but it was actually the deepest form of love. She knew me well enough to predict my reactions and wise enough to prevent them. Tommy, meanwhile, had grown from a shy second grader into a confident young boy who understood that speaking truth to power is one of the most important things a person can do. His teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, told us he'd become a leader in his classroom, always standing up for kids who were being bullied. Secrets aren't always bad, Tommy explained to a younger child who was afraid to tell teachers about bullying. Good secrets protect people. Bad secrets protect bad people. You have to know the difference. The wisdom of an 8-year-old who'd learned life's hardest lessons far too early. As for me, I learned that being a good husband and father sometimes means trusting the people you love to make decisions you disagree with. Sarah could have handled this crisis differently, but her approach protected our family while ensuring justice was served. She carried an impossible burden for months so that Tommy and I wouldn't have to. Every night now, I watch Sarah sleep peacefully beside me. No more mysterious trips to Tommy's room. No more whispered secrets or hidden documents. Our house has returned to the normal rhythms of family life. Homework help, bedtime stories, weekend pancakes, and dreams about the future. But we're stronger now. We're a family who faced the worst kind of betrayal and emerged with our integrity intact. We know that love sometimes requires sacrifice, that courage can be found in the smallest people, and that justice, while slow, is ultimately more powerful than evil. If this story moved you, please share it with someone who needs to know that truth always finds a way to surface. If you've ever had to make a difficult decision to protect your family, leave a comment below. You're not alone in carrying those burdens. And if you've ever misjudged someone's motives, Remember that love sometimes looks like secrecy when it's actually protection. Subscribe for more stories about families who discover strength they never knew they possessed. Because everyone deserves to know that even in our darkest moments, we're capable of extraordinary courage. Trust the people who love you. Sometimes they see dangers and solutions that you can't see yourself. And never underestimate the power of an 8-year-old who knows the difference between right and wrong.